Why does that happen for some of us? Why do we think? Because we want to utilize Ramadan as an opportunity to now still leverage some of the clarity that comes from the uniqueness of the month, right? And a couple of weeks ago or a couple of days ago, everything's a blur in my head. I don't know how long ago it was, but we're talking about how, if some of you might not have been there, why it's important to not just in a mode of self-talk say, well, it was only because of Ramadan. Because we've already created a validation or justification as to why that momentum can't be maintained. As if the idea that it's because of Ramadan somehow is a limiting as opposed to kind of a factor that causes increase, right? So the example that I used that day was that if I lose weight because of dieting, then yes, that's what the catalyst is for losing weight. But if I was to say it in a way that was derogatory, and someone in the audience had said that, they use the word derogatory, and I said, who are you being derogatory towards when you talk in that way? And he said that to yourself. It's like, yeah, you're talking to yourself in a way that's putting you down, as opposed to recognizing and leveraging and then amplifying what it is that you learn of self-awareness. You create a statement that at a surface level might seem like it makes sense, but it's now needing a paradigm shift that says, because of Ramadan, I was able to learn these things about myself. Not that because of Ramadan, I now am limited to 30 days of a certain experience, and I can't go past that. Do you see what I mean? Does that make sense? At this juncture where we're at, there's a certain paradox that we want to start to think about. And our spiritual tradition seemingly has a lot of paradoxes in it. But fundamentally, those paradoxes are rooted in a recognition that Allah Azza wa in His infinite wisdom, He puts within some of these moments recipes for that inward illumination. So we have, for example, in these last 10 days and nights, the pursuit of what we call Laylatul Qadr, a night of destiny, a night of power. There hasn't been a day in the last, 14, 15 days, maybe not in the first couple of weeks, but definitively in the latter half of the month, where every single day, at least a dozen new people tell me how exhausted they are and how tired they are. And it's paradoxical because we now are in a state where it necessitates overt fatigue and weakness to experience real power. Do you know what I'm saying? That you get to a state now where you are, in a physical sense, just running on empty, right? You're trying to study for exams. You're trying to figure out how to go to work. You're trying to figure out how to balance your routine, going on a few hours a night. But it's a necessary component that your weakening becomes the entry point to the embrace of that power that the night claims to be able to bestow and engage. And I want you to think about this because there's now a choice to either reflect or to not reflect, right? May Allah make us people of reflection. That religion in and of itself can be something that gets so rooted in externals, and we have organic increase, but we then suspend the parts of ourselves that make us distinct from the rest of creation. You and I have been given intellect. We've been given aql. Other parts of creation have not been given intellect and aql. You and I have a distinct capacity through our spiritual heart, the qalb, to be able to utilize now both as organs of cognition to determine not anxiety-driven or a longing that is deprecated, as opposed to a longing that is productive, that then says, this is how I'm going to meet the coming days. How does it feel for those who have fasted before to eat on the day of Eid in the morning for the first time? What does that feel like? Why don't we do this? Now there's more people here. Just turn to the people sitting around you. What does it feel like to eat on the first day of Shawwal, the day of Eid? You're eating at breakfast time. And then as you're talking about that, why? Why do you think you feel that way?
You appreciate things more, right? You're more appreciative.
So what does it feel like when you're eating on that first day of Eid, that day of Shawwal? It's morning time, the sun is in the sky, and you're putting food into your mouth. How does it feel? There's not a right or a wrong answer here, but what does it feel like for you?
It feels good, but it also feels kind of weird to eat breakfast for the first time after 30 days.
Good and weird, right? It's a great combination. Good and weird. What else? What else does it feel like?
A little excited, like you're doing something fun after a long time.
Exciting and fun. Anything else?
I feel like it's a little bit sad too, because I feel like it's the marking of like the end of Ramadan, and because I've been so good during Ramadan, the end of it is just a little bit like I don't understand. So I get a little bit sad, but it's also not fun. But it just feels like okay, I can have a bagel now at 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. But it does make me a little bit sad.
Anything else? Other thoughts? What is it like to eat on that first day of Shawwal, that day of Eid? Yeah.
A little out of place.
Why does it feel out of place?
Because you've been so used to eating, not even every day.
Every feeling, go ahead, yeah. Now think about this. Months later, it's Dhul Hijjah, it's Muharram, it's any other month that we might not even know what the name of it is on the Islamic calendar, right? It's September, it's December. Do you think about the meal that you're eating in the morning 6 weeks, 6 months after the day of Eid al-Fitr, the first of Shawwal, the same way you think about that food you're eating the first day after Ramadan ends? Is it the same exact kind of thought process after some time has passed? Do you get the question? So does it feel the same? Why? What's changed? Why is it not fun and exciting or good and weird or sad days, weeks later? Okay, but what does that do then?
It sensitizes you, like it makes you forget about your gratitude sometimes, like overconsumption and like doing too much of anything can make you forget about like the appreciation or the gratitude for what it is. Too much of anything, maybe, kind of thing.
Great. Any other thoughts? What's happening? What's shifting?
That we didn't work that hard to deserve it. That we could eat it every day. It's not like Ramadan. We didn't eat for longer than like the next morning.
Okay, great. Any other thoughts? What's shifting, in addition to many of the things I've said, another thing to add onto it is there's become a dilution now of the awareness, the consciousness that Ramadan builds. Everything is going to feel a little bit different so long as there's presence in the engagement. Why there's feelings attached to it is because taqwa, consciousness, in our tradition, is not mindfulness the way mindfulness exists in terms of contemporary jargon, but it's a mindfulness that's rooted in an ethical imperative. So you can feel anything you want to, right? Feelings are not a problem. And the fact that people feel different things in response to that first morsel of food that they're eating, or even later throughout the day, the feeling in and of itself isn't a problem. But what's catalyzing the feeling is what it is that you want to retain when you're trying to now think about how you're moving through the day, because you still have organically a sense of presence that is bringing your intellect and your heart as an organ of cognition to be able to make sense of the act that you're about to engage in before you act. Even a simple thing as putting food in your mouth or drinking water during the daylight hours, it's not that you're thinking twice about it because you feel guilty or sad or upset. The idea is to not focus on the feeling that comes after, but focus for a moment on the fact that you're thinking twice about it. Do you understand what I'm saying? What am I saying? Why are you nodding your head?
You're saying that, so like when you eat the day of Eid, you know, it feels a little different because you're thinking before you eat. So that's a feeling that you should try to continue because that's the change. You don't think before you eat.
It shouldn't be what the difference is, but that's what the difference is. You spent a month now awakening celestial parts of yourself. Parts that are not just nourished through the physicality of the world, feeding, eating, drinking, physical intimacy. It changes now from the depictions in the Quran, right? Ula'ika kal an'am, that they're just like cattle, going in a state where default settings render now a diminishing of presence. And so when you're trying to figure out how do I maintain the momentum, how do I keep going and building off of my self-awareness? One key ingredient is going to be utilizing what you will experience organically on the day of Eid. Man, should I be eating this thing? Or just eating it makes me feel grateful. Or I feel good, but it's weird. Or I'm sad. Or I'm excited. And this is fun, but you're still thinking about it. You still are bringing presence into it versus the alternative that comes quite often. You could be sitting in front of a TV and throwing food into your mouth. You could be watching a movie and throwing food into your mouth. You're doing a mindless act and another mindless act that doesn't necessitate it being without mindfulness, but this is where the choice comes in. Am I going to bring presence in consciously, or am I going to now just return back to a body and deny the fact that the body is a vessel of a soul that is waiting for it to just continue to be awake, to continue to be conscious? Do you get what I'm saying? And it's going to make a categorical distinction between what the days feel like, because the goal is to not be in pursuit of perfection. That is an intangible, unreasonable goal. You are going to make mistakes. It's not going to be the same. We literally have feasted at Maghrib time. Not feasted, no one's like gorging out, right? But it's very different if 30 days in a row, you're able to sit with 500-600 Muslims, pray with them, break fast with them, read Quran with them, make dua with them, not have to go your entirety of the day without seeing one person who knows what it's like to be a minority, who knows what it's like to have to feel weird, that you're constantly explaining your behavior, who can't hide their skin color, who has to have no way of just dealing with people mispronouncing their name again and again and again. Coming to a space where people can understand. You don't have to explain yourself or where you come from or how all of these different variables can be inundating or heavy or suffocating. You just come and be with God. And then it gets to a place where the change in routine the change in what happens. It's going to have impact definitively, but you can have a response to it that brings your intellect, brings your heart, or you can just bring your body to it. And if you're just going to bring your body to it, then if you fall, you're just going to stay on the ground. But if you're bringing your heart, you're bringing your mind, it's not going to be that those things are going to be alone what helps you bring yourself up, but your heart and mind awoke is going to also be the reason why you help somebody else get up when they fall. So you're not going to let somebody go through it by themselves. You're not going to just be in a place where you are seeing it individually, egocentristically. You're going to now think about every single variable and factor that plays a role, that allows for me to simply get to the place where I ponder on the fact that the very next day, I'm thinking about the food that I'm putting in my mouth. And I have to want to retain that type of thoughtfulness in order for me to then harness it and keep going with it through the remainder of my days. Or am I going to return back simply to a robot, default settings, waking up, going through routines, feeding my physical, denying my spiritual? And then the worst thing, that when Shaitan's waswasa returns, believing the whispers when they say that the mistake that you made is somehow greater than God's mercy, and that there's no reason for you to try again, that you didn't get it done, so that means that there was no point. And then the words will come out, it was only because of Ramadan. You see what I mean? This world, in comparison to other realms of existence, what our theology posits is that this is not what it is as an ends, but it's a means to something. May Allah make us all people of Jannah. But we are in a state of existence that has a temporary aspect to it. There's finiteness to this world right now for our individual experiences in it. And from here, we transition into a place that's called the barzakh, an intermediary realm, a grave. We go from there to a day of accounting, a day of resurrection. And then you have eternal existence. If we were to categorize what this world is in relation to the worlds that come after, the day of judgment is the place where there's judgment. What is being judged? The actions that you undertake in this world. You can't on the day of judgment say, I'm going to now go and seek forgiveness from somebody. You can't on the day of judgment say, I need 5 more minutes so that I'm not self-deprecating. You can't on the day of judgment say, Ya Allah, give me an opportunity to just go and be nicer to somebody. That's where actions are assessed, not performed. The place of the grave is meant to be the place of rest, right? The hadith has narrations that say, for the ones who did good in this world, the rest of the grave is like the rest of a newlywed couple on their wedding night. It's just peaceful slumber. It's also not a place to do. So this is the world of exertion, the world of action, the world of doing. And so rooted in that is that it's a world of accountability. It's a world of choices. So your choices are not now just going to be, am I going to wear blue today? Or am I going to wear green today? Your choices are not going to just be about things that are outward, but perspective is also a choice. And in these last nights of Ramadan, you want to ask Allah before the day of Eid to help you see yourself the way that He sees you, so that you don't jump into a mode that now starts to tear apart at yourself. And what is actual and what you have learned in terms of capacity, you deny, and there's not so much that goes into it other than stopping to just reflect. or falling into statements that are just a handful of words, but they can be so powerful because they just break you down inwardly. And then what you feel in terms of growth, in terms of exhilaration, in terms of something you didn't even know that you were in need of. You give it up for reasons that are not worth giving it up for, man. Why do you have to stop doing any of the things that you've been doing? If you have the physical ability to fast, why would you stop fasting? The recommendation in our tradition, both Sunni and Shi'i, is that you fast 6 days in Shawwal. There's different opinions on what those 6 days are. You can't fast on the day of Eid. It's haram. In the Shi'i tradition, the 3 days beyond that too, you are not supposed to fast. That's what Sheikh Fayaz told me. When he comes up, we can ask him. But in understanding and recognizing beyond the limited days that it's haram to fast. It's not a choice. You don't fast on the day of Eid. You celebrate on the day of Eid. But you just fasted, if you have the capacity to fast, an entire month. So fast some of the days that's recommended outside of Ramadan. Because the verse that says, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, doesn't say that it's just in Ramadan, but potentially the gain of taqwa, that consciousness, that mindfulness, it's attached to the fast as a vehicle. It's an act that yields it. Why are you going to stop fasting? We're thinking as we start to develop programs post-Ramadan and the pandemic curtails more, inshallah, we typically, for example, would have many people come to Jama'ah here. Who has been here to Jama'ah ever at the Islamic Center? Yeah, so think about it, right? This room we used to use for Jama'ah, and then we'd have live streams downstairs as well. That's my son, Kareem, stealing dates. Nobody saw you so fast, you can't see it. And now we get, other than, we used to get 800, now we get 200 people. I want to tell you this so that you can kind of understand some of our logic programmatically. So we used to do something after Jummah called Fried Chicken Friday. Anybody ever come to Fried Chicken Friday? It's amazing, right? Soul food after Jummah, mac and cheese, potatoes, corn, fried chicken, baked chicken. What we're thinking of doing is that because there's a shift, people work at home more, our students are here at certain times of the year, but also the pandemic impacts how they're on campus. We've gone from 800 to now about 250 people for Jummah. We'll still do that, but likely on Mondays and Thursdays when Sheikh Fayaz and I do halaqas, we'll also attach iftar to it so that you can come and break fast with people. We want to sustain that, and I'm saying it to you now, so that you're here on an evening during Maghrib time. Many of you are here throughout the weeks at different times in the day. And so we want to encourage communally the ability for us to do this. So you can fast those 6 days of Shawwal, but you start to also build a relationship with the practice outside of Ramadan. It's going to continue, but it'll necessitate us coming to it. Make determination in these last days of Ramadan. I'm not going to stop fasting. What are the ingredients spiritually that make you think twice about that food that you're going to consume on the day of Eid? The Quran in and of itself categorically defines reading, listening, recitation, reflection, contemplation upon it as a text, its verses, its words, to have a link to taqwa, to consciousness. And the beauty of it is that you don't have to be in a place where you can understand its words. You don't even have to be the one reciting it, right? You just saw my son run in and out. I took my son and my daughter to watch the Nets play the first time Kyrie came back to play. People know Kyrie Irving. Anybody know what I'm talking about? It's a basketball game. People don't know what I'm talking about. And so we went to watch the Nets play at the Barclays Center, and they have like this soundtrack playing. It's a basketball arena. My 6-year-old is sitting next to me. I have videos of him in this arena, and as the music is playing, he's moving in all different directions. I'm saying, Kareem, I didn't know you were such a good dancer. And as he's moving, Baba, I'm not dancing. I'm like, what are you talking about? And I show him the video that his body is moving. And he's not even aware of it. This is not a conversation on the permissibility or impermissibility of music. That's not what I'm talking about. But you don't want to undermine the reality that just the simple consumption on an auditory level bears impact to your inside. And so the way that music can get your body to move, whether you're even thinking about it or not, when you stand and you hear that Quran being recited, it is an oral tradition, a recitation. It is impacting, and what it is telling you is that it is an ingredient that brings you to think twice before you do something, to have taqwa, to have consciousness. Why are you going to stop listening to it after Ramadan is done? You want to think strategically, not with a Sunday school trivia knowledge of Islam, not with your back against the wall, making excuses for judgments that nobody's even passing on you. You are grown individuals. Just like nobody could compel you to be here at this moment, nobody is going to choose your choices for you after. Root your decisions on what is actual. It makes a difference when you are engaging Quran with a way that you let yourself be open to it. It's an ingredient to the cultivation of taqwa. Bilal Ware, who's an academic, deeply knowledgeable, he had this amazing post that I talked about at Jummah a couple of weeks ago, where he said that our relationship to Quran, especially in Ramadan, becomes something that is so deeply impacted by imperialistic tendencies, that our goal somehow becomes to conquer the Quran. He said your goal isn't supposed to be to conquer the Quran, you're supposed to be conquered by the Quran. And you heard Sheikh Sahib say it, you heard Sheikh Fiaz say it, you heard everybody more or less say it again and again. You want to reflect, contemplate. You want to engage, to act upon it. One of the most beautiful stories that I've heard from Sheikh Suhaib multiple times in the years that I've known him, he tells the story of a Sahaba who during the time of the Tabi'een, the generation after the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who gets excited about completing the Quran for the first time. And people are astonished that this man who is a companion is saying that he only now at this elderly age did a khatam of the Quran. And he says to them that the khatam that he did of the Quran was not a khatam of recitation. It wasn't one of tilawah, but it was one of ahwal and a'mal. That he had finally done every single act that the Quran told you to act upon. That he had done every single thing that the text said to do, to engage. That's crazy to think about. But aspirationally, the transition comes that I'm scared to read the book. Somebody else is supposed to recite it to me. I'm not supposed to be the one that reads it or engages it or acts upon it. No, man, it was sent for you more than anybody. It creates a philosophy on life that allows for determination and decisions to be rooted now not in a moral relativism that breeds the greed, the ego, the stratification of society, the racism, the arrogance, the bigotry. Look at how people make choices and they justify it. as to why it's okay for some people to have nothing, why it's okay for some people to be mistreated. Why is it validated for somebody to live just blocks away from where we live? And they're going to be forever crushed by systemic and structural mechanisms that are built purposely for them to not be able to save wealth, to not own property, to get constantly pushed out because of gentrification. You know why you got to keep reading the Quran? So that your heart stays awake and you don't just sit back passive when realities like that are not happening countries away, they're happening blocks away from where you are. Do you get what I'm saying? So 2 things so far. 1, keep fasting if you want to be able to retain the ability to think twice before you put that food in your mouth, the way you will do organically on the day of Eid. Read Quran, engage the Quran. It's a vehicle for taqwa. I don't know why. I don't know. I'm not God. I don't know why we pray 3 rak'ahs at Maghrib instead of 12. I don't know why some of these things are. But Allah in His hikmah has put secrets into these practices that will yield now what it is that it claims to yield. So it's not me by conjecture telling you, but the verse says it. كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. You do the fast, it perhaps will give you taqwa. It's that simple. ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. That this is a book, there's no doubt in it, a guidance for the people of taqwa. That's just it. And it's that straightforward and simple. So you just reflect, you contemplate, you think. Can we just move up a bit? People are going to be bringing in stuff to set up for iftar, so we can come in this way, so we're not getting in the ways of the volunteers. The third thing that's important in any spiritual diet is just being thinking of the company that you're a part of. And it's not just the person that you came here with. It's not just the person that you have sat with directly, on and off, eating iftar with, or maybe you stood next to them in prayer, or you had them in your home. But the collective experience, where you are in gatherings that, inshallah, are amongst the gatherings that the angels descended. You sit in the company of those whose intention does not bring them here purely for the satisfaction of capitalistic desire. Nobody's coming here to make money. Nobody showed up here because their presence here is going to help them make money. You spend a lot of time in workplaces that are built around the idea of making money. I'm not saying it's a good or a bad, but when it becomes the only or the predominant, you start to get impacted at the level of your heart. When you engage in conversations that are rooted now in weekend experiences that you can't relate to. I can't relate to the fact that you went out and did what you did. I'm not judging you for it, but I don't hang out with people like that. I don't do some of the things that you do. And I start to feel more isolated, more alone than anything. They say what loneliness does to your body is more impactful statistically than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. That's what loneliness can do. And you feel so isolated and by yourself. And so there's 2 things that we want to think about here. 1, why would you keep yourself from being in gatherings that have helped you, whether it is directly or indirectly? So you come to pray Maghrib and you keep praying Maghrib. We do the halakas, you come to the halakas. You're taking a choice of whether you're going to show up to Jummah or not. Don't think about it just as burdensome obligation, but think about it through the prism of what is it giving to me on a metaphysical level. And that company becomes critical because right now, Mas'ud sitting here is benefiting from the presence of somebody whose name he doesn't know on the other side of the room. The gathering in and of itself is not just about that I take from what is most apparent. This is not what our tradition is built off of, but embracing the things that are unseen. And you got to look to those in this frame of the company that you keep. And so you bring different frames and prisms to what am I going to bring myself to be a part of? Does this make sense? I'll give you an example of what I mean about the unseen elements of things. We have a hadith where Abdullah radiallahu anh is sitting with his father amongst a group of companions. And the Prophet ﷺ asks, what tree is the Muslim most like? The Bedouin. And people are talking, and Abdullah knows the answer. It's the date palm tree. He's thinking in his head, but he doesn't answer it. And then the Prophet says it's the date palm tree, the nakhla tree. He tells his father, I knew the answer. And he said, you should have spoken up. And he said, out of deference to elders, etc. And there's a lot that goes into the hadith. When I read the hadith, I said, why is this tree the tree that the Prophet is saying we want to be like? And there's a lot of benefits that the hadith speak about, that you have shade from its leaves, its fruit, its dates. We've been eating dates this whole month. May Allah bless those who picked the dates, harvested the dates, grew the dates, donated the dates for us to break our fast on. Because for you to get that one date on that plate, literally hundreds, if not thousands of people had to be put into motion for it to land in your hand. When you look at the date palm tree in comparison to what is seen, and you look at what's not seen, it's distinct from other trees because most trees have what's called a taproot system. It's jumbled up like this, and then it anchors itself into the ground. The nakhla tree's roots, they're not jumbled like this. They're just spread very thinly into the earth, meaning the tree that the believer is like, it's not stuck in the dunya the way other trees are. It's not anchored into the materialistic world. But you can't see that from what is seen. You have to be able to see that from what is not seen. Do you see what I mean? So what are you not seeing? The unseen benefits of being in gatherings like this. And ensuring that on a regular basis, if you can't do it daily, that doesn't mean it can't be done at all. A couple of times a week, you shift the paradigm. Why do you want to pray in Jama'ah? Because you don't get the benefits of Jama'ah without the Jama'ah. You can't get the benefits of the congregation and the community when you're standing by yourself. When you get to the place of recognition that all of us take from each one of us. And that's where the strength comes from. So you come to the various programs for your benefit. You come to the halaqas. You go to pray. Spaces afford to you what they will. You will get stuff from this space that you might not get from your local masjid. You don't want a simplistic understanding of religion. If the people in the masjid are not the ones that are going to break fast with you, then just go to the masjid to pray. Still benefit from it. Don't make yourself devoid of it. Allow for yourself to take from it what is your right to take. You prostrate, you pray in congregation, you're there with the angels. It's written in the books that this servant of mine came to perform Maghrib in this place is going to elevate your heart. And then the second part to this, the second dimension, nobody can benefit from your absence. So you have to recognize that your presence brings blessing. So when you're choosing to not come, you're choosing then to have the rest of us not benefit from your being here. There's going to be people who show up that they're going to need someone like you to be where they're coming to? And what if they meet somebody who is harsh and judgmental in their practice of religion? Then when they see you, they see what's inadequate in you, deficiency. And all of us have either known somebody like this or know somebody who has gone through something like this, if not ourselves. May Allah never make us from amongst those who are harsh. May He make us only from amongst those who are gentle and kind. The company you keep is going to be important. Frequent spaces that serve as a space of illumination for your heart. Not just the places you're supposed to be from a materialistic standpoint. Some people, they might not get it. They're not going to understand. Why do you go to volunteer on the weekend? Why do you go and give money in charity? Why do you do these things? Because they're the right thing to do. You don't need a professor's permission to pray your prayers. You don't need your boss to validate the fact that you wash your feet when you make wudu. The ideas that frequently engage us externally give indication to obstacles that engage themselves inwardly. And what Shaitan wants when the month is done is for you to believe that it only existed in a temporary state. But it's you that's been praying your prayers. It's you that's been fasting your fast. But alhamdulillah, by the grace of God, you're in a place where you're able to do these things. All I'm asking you to do as we go into remaining hours of Ramadan is to just think about it. Think about it deeply. Why does it feel different when you eat on the first day after Ramadan? And what you don't want to equate it to is simple understanding that in its simplicity becomes detrimental. Because on the other end, it's still simple understanding. You're thinking twice because Ramadan worked. It yielded awareness. It yielded consciousness. It yielded presence of mind. So you keep doing the things that you're supposed to be doing. And the opportunity to engage on it at the level that is individualized. You allow for yourself, if you prayed in the late hours of the night in Ramadan, to pray a little bit in the late hours of the night in Ramadan. You allow for yourself, if you engaged in acts of volunteerism, to do that. If you sat down and had conversations with different people, maintain those relationships and friendships. Engage in what it is that's going to be meaningful. So 3 parts. Ramadan concludes, keep fasting. The recommendation in Shawwal of 6 bears continuity. Fast beyond it. The middle days of the month, the days when the moon is at its fullest, the Prophet ﷺ would fast these days. Mondays and Thursdays, fast those days. Regular fasts outside of Ramadan. 2, keep a relationship and engagement with Quran. 3, be in gatherings that are good for your heart and think about it in that way. Because there are gatherings that are not good for your heart. There are gatherings that are purposely built to have you deny the existence of your heart. And then allow for yourself to go at a pace that just makes sense for you. The month of Ramadan is like a madrasa. It's an opportunity to learn about who it is that you are. The believer's state, and may Allah make us from the mu'mineen, is such that we are meant to be those that adapt. We embrace change. You are not the same as you were on the last day of Sha'ban. You go into the month of Ramadan and you are now in a different place than where you were prior to it. Reflect on the complexity. It's not complicated, but it's not just one single variable. What brought you to this place Take out a notebook at the end of the night and just write it down so that you're deeply reflecting on it. And the last thing I'll say before we call the adhan, it's good that you're tired. It's good that you're exhausted. And it's good that you're anxious. Because your anxiety is showing just how precious this is to you. Allah is the one that gave us all of our emotions in the first place. They serve as data points. Your worry is indicative of the fact that you don't want to lose something, but you take it to its logical conclusion. You don't want to lose it because it's good for you. You don't want to lose it because there's benefit and khair in it. So don't give it up without a fight. Don't give it up for something that's not worth it. The exhaustion means that you've worked hard. That's why we have a day of Eid at the end of it, so that you can celebrate the achievement. The achievement is about what's taking place inwardly. And as your brother who loves you, don't go into the first night of Shawwal at the conclusion of the last iftar and immediately do things that are bad for your heart. The night before Eid is also a Mubarak night. Make dua on that night. Pray on that night. Don't do haram things. And push yourself forward in a way where your celebration is rooted in what our tradition asks us to do. Some of us, we are going to go to work on the day of Eid because we don't have a choice. That's the reality of some of our jobs. Some of us are going to go to work just because we're choosing to. Don't do that this Eid. Celebrate your holiday. Don't go to class, you get exemptions for it. Move exams, we can help you with it. Plan from now with love and care what you're going to give in terms of gifts. Think, in this Ramadan, either in front of you or in our offices or even in my apartment, more than a dozen people have taken Shahada in this community. May Allah strengthen them and increase them in all that is good. What does Eid look like for somebody whose family is not Muslim? And with consciousness, with taqwa, think about them beforehand. Do you get what I'm saying? But utilize it, benefit from everything that you've taken, and don't give it up, man. It's for you. It's for you. Ensure that you're treating it with the care that it deserves. Wallahu ta'ala alam wa billahi tawfiq. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.